everybody, welcome back to day 2 of my Shelby dress sew along. Today we're going to be doing the front and back. I say bodice, but it's actually the bodice and skirt are both combined, so it'll be joining all the front pieces and all the back pieces together and putting in the facing. So I'm just going to start off with doing some stay stitching. I've printed off the instructions today because I've been having some problems with my thumb, so this saves me looking at my phone. So for the stay stitching, you're just doing the neckline. You're going to start at the edge of the neck and go into the centre, and it's just going to stop your neckline from getting stretched out of place, and you just want to do it a little bit within the seam allowance. So I'm going to start here to the middle and do the same on the other side. So I'm just going to do that for both the front centres and the back centre piece. Also, I would say that with the crepe, it does have a bit of stretch due to the texture, so I'm just trying to be careful not to stretch my fabric out while I sew it. So the next bit I'm going to do is attach the waist ties to the back. Where did I put them? When I find them. So there's the little waist ties that we made last week. So they just attach to the back where the little markers are on the back bodice pieces. So mine are here. I'm going to have it so the bottom of my seam goes towards the bottom of the dress. It doesn't really matter, but I just think it's a bit neater, so that's how I'm going to do mine. Okay, so I'm going to tie these together so that they don't get caught in the rest of my sewing. Just like that. There we go, tie them at the back. And then, so the next step is to attach the side backs to the back. Now, I'm going to do French seams because I really love French seams, and at this moment in time my overlock is also being fixed, but you can do French seams, you can do overlocked seams, or you can do a zigzag. It's entirely up to you. You can use pinking shears, but they are something I've used in the past, but I generally don't use them unless I know the fabric isn't going to fray. So I'm just checking that I've got the side backs, because all the pieces look a little bit similar and I don't want to sew the wrong bits on, because if I do, it will be a lot of unpicking. Yeah, so it's going to have, see, the shoulder seam and the underarm. So I'm just going to start off by pinning them together, wrong sides together for a French seam. So I'm just going to do that first. I just really like French seams because I just think it gives a really nice finish. So I try to do them in most of my garments, especially things that are going to be a little bit fancier. Well, I don't know, you know, something that I class as being a bit extra special. I definitely try and make them French seams. If a fabric frays a lot, then I probably wouldn't do a French seam. I'd probably just overlock. I think some sewing machines as well, I think mine does actually come with a sort of fake overlocker stitch, so you could also do that on the edges. Actually, I've never looked to see how mine works. It does do that, but I can't remember how. I should probably look into it. Probably be handy. So I'm just, because there's quite a curve to these pieces, I'm just making sure I get all my notches lined up. So the seam allowance is 1/2 inch. So I'm just gonna sew a 1/4 inch, trim it and do another 1/4 inch. So that is 1/2 of the seam done. If you were doing a regular seam, you would just sew right sides together, obviously, and finish the seam however you wanted. So I'm just going to give this a little trim, then I'll iron it, and then I'll fold it back round so right sides are together, and then I'll sew it again at a 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to do exactly the same on the other half of the back to attach the other side back. So now I'm just going to sew the other 1/2 inch seam allowance, which I'm not going to pin because, sorry, 1/4 inch, the other 1/4 inch, and then it'll be 1/2 inch in total. I'm not going to pin this because I've already sewn it once, so it'll all be lined up where I want it to be, she says. And there we go. One lovely French seam. So yeah, that is one side down and another to go. Okay, so I've got my overlocker back now. So I bought a green mossy coloured thread to overlock the edges of my facing, so I now have done that. I decided against the bias binding because I think it will have been too bulky for the fabric. So yeah, as you can see, that's my finished edge now. And I have attached the centre back to the backside panels, and then I've done exactly the same thing with the front of the dress. So there's one side. I have attached the centre front to the side front panels, just exactly the same as the back, with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I wasn't sure exactly how that would work because of the shaping around the bust area. I wasn't sure if the curves would work with the French seam, because how the pattern tells you to do it is to clip into the seam allowance, so that it's just so that it has the flexibility to move over your body. But actually, I think because it's such a narrow French seam, I think it's worked fine, so that's really good. And the next thing I'm going to do is attach the back to the front of the dress at the shoulder seams, and then we're going to do the side seams. So that's when it's going to start to really look like a dress, which is really exciting. I am not going to French seam my shoulders because they won't really get seen, whereas the side and the front and back seams, I think you can see around the bottom of this of the dress. So yeah, I'm just going to stitch these with 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to overlock those edges. Okay, so that is the shoulder seams done of the dress. And then the next step is going to be to sew the side seams. So again, I'm going to go back to my French seams for doing this. Yeah, I'm just going to do both of those side seams, and again making sure that I'm matching up all those notches so that I get the right shape for the dress. I've now done my side seams. So the next thing that I need to do is the facing. This is coming together actually a lot quicker than I thought it would. Yes, I am just going to get this attached, and then that is going to be the end for this week's part of the sew along. And then I'm gonna just sew this straight with a 1/2 inch seam allowance because this seam isn't going to be visible. Once your facing's attached, you just need to go along and do something called understitching. So this just helps prevent your facing from flipping out. You want to press the seam flat, and then, I've already done it on mine, you are going to stitch along the facing like top stitching, but catching your seam allowance. You also need to trim the seam allowance around the top curves of the neckline, these parts. And it says on the pattern to do as far up the front as you can and as far around the neckline. I've actually gone all the way around the neckline. I found that fine to do. I'm not sure why you wouldn't do that. It seemed okay for me, but if you can't manage to get up into those front curves on the neckline, then that doesn't matter. Just do as much as you can, and then just stop and start again to go around the top of the neckline. And then the next thing to do is to stitch in the ditch on these shoulder seams. So I've done one here, and then I'm just about to do my second one. So you're just stitching real slow in that ditch. So the stitching should be pretty much not visible. And that will also just help to keep your facing lay flat. It hasn't gone as well on that second shoulder, but it doesn't matter. It blends in really well to my fabric. It's quite hard to see that ditch on my fabric. Yeah. And that is the end of my week 2 sewing. So you've now got your front and back bodices assembled, you have got your facing assembled. What I'll do is I'll just do a little video of me trying this on, see how the fit's going and how it's looking so far. So I'll add that into the end of this video, and then next week I'm going to be back attaching the sleeves to my dress. It's coming along loads quicker than I expected, and I'm really happy with how it's looking so far. Okay, so here is my Shelby dress so far. I love the movement of the fabric, it's just lovely. I'm really pleased with how this is going. If you can't tell, I love green, this is my hallway. Yeah, it just feels lovely. And I just need to press the front again because I haven't done that since the understitching. But yeah, I really like this. I think I made the perfect fabric choice. I've got it tied quite tightly at the back at the minute, but you can let that out for an even floatier look. And yeah, it just feels lovely. I'm really chuffed with this one, and I can't wait to get my sleeves on because it's so close to being a finished dress now, and I love wearing this.